5 years ago, we covered our entire front yard with wood chips, and today we're going to take a look at what happened to our soil as a result. When we were first getting into gardening, we were looking for low-cost ways to build our soil, and one of the resources that we encountered was the 2011 documentary entitled Back to Eden. And in this documentary, Washington State gardener Paul Gauci claims to build soil purely out of wood chips spread out across his garden. And not really knowing anything about the fundamentals of building healthy soil, we bought it and went to work covering the entire yard. Wood chips into soil is a pretty sweet message when you're low on cash and high on ambition. And so I called an arborist and had them drop a few chips for a small fee. And then after sourcing 2,500 square feet worth of cardboard, we smothered our lawn and layered wood chips 3 to 6 inches deep. Since then, a lot has happened. We moved some wood chips around to make garden beds, and those wood chips got scraped back over the garden beds. The tenants that we had living here before we moved back raked the wood chips around a little bit. But we're gonna try and take a look at a couple different spaces within the yard, specifically at the soil, and see how the wood chips broke down or didn't over this time period. And we'll try to compare it to some other parts of the yard where we didn't give them the wood chip treatment. And before we go any further, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Taylor, and I ordinarily teach gardeners on this channel to explore sustainable and regenerative growing techniques that save time and money. But today, I don't actually know what we're gonna find out here. This is a technique that was pretty popular back in the day, but I also know that it had a lot of backlash with people saying, you can't spread wood chips everywhere, it'll rob your soil of nitrogen and your plants will die. Well, here's the thing, we did it. For better or for worse. And now as we get ready to start installing new garden beds for our micro farm next season, we're gonna be raking the wood chips off the yard, reusing them in the pathways and in other places on our farm so that we can reestablish the rows oriented north to south. And so we're gonna take a look at what happened to the soil. Now, first off, I'm gonna try to get some side-by-side comparisons of soil from various spots throughout the yard. We have pretty sandy soil in a lot of places to begin with, and we've got this huge ponderosa pine presiding over the yard, soaking up the moisture. It's also worth saying that we spread wood chips and then never replenished them. The only thing that we treated these wood chips with over the course of several growing seasons, which was Jadam microbial solution. And most of that was spent directly on the beds that we were trying to grow in at the time. So the wood chips maybe got some residual splashage, but more or less, these chips have had the chance to just decompose all on their own. We're growing in zone 6B, semi-arid, hot, dry summers, cold, dry winters with some snowfall. This winter, however, early on, it's been very wet and fairly temperate. So it rained a few days ago, but let's take a look. All right, so this is kind of just below the front yard. The grass has basically just been allowed to regrow, the grass and weeds. Let's just jump into this and see what kind of soil we're looking at. It stops right there. So, I mean, there might be like gravel down there or something, but I just want to see if I can get a cross section. It's very wet. Hey, there's a little worm. Nice. Yeah. Roots, I'm guessing. I mean, there's like some moss growing even, which is crazy. It's so damp. It's been very damp this year. This is kind of similar to the previous. Try and cut out. Yeah, did a little jig. It's not like the worst looking soil in the world, but I mean, it's also hard to tell because it's so wet, but there's roots. So this is kind of below this tree, as is indicated by all the pine cones. And we'll see. Looking at here. Oh, I think I hit a root. I mean, past the root, seems like shovel goes in pretty well. Let's try and cut out a piece again. I mean, it's drier down deeper, I guess, because it's probably not getting the rain. But, I mean, it's very crumbly. It's nice soil. Nice. I mean, I'm ruining the structure right here, but you know, it's actually very loamy, which is cool. And then there's, you know, of course, you can see like here, right at the, where the wood chips meet the soil, there's all that fungal strandage. But even like, look at that weed. See, this is some tape from the cardboard. and all those very broken down. Like, these were huge wood chips when we put them down. Of course, it's been 5 years, so. Sample. Oh, there's a little wormy. There's a good amount of worms. Yeah, it's great. It seems like, just from the look of it, obviously, you know, we don't know. Can't tell everything just by looking at it, but nice and crumbly and weedy. And then there's these little baby, I mean, there's a root strand. Anywhere that there's weeds, there's like teensy little mycelial networks forming. Okay, so this was a pathway. Here's some more plastic. Nice. There's a weed. Okay, so I guess maybe check another place or two. You want to go back toward the house? Nice. Just a big old wood chip. Nice. Mm-hmm. Cool. There's a nice little cross section you can look at. Wood chips are down. I mean, we spread these 3 to 6 inches thick, maybe more here. I don't know. I guess it's it's pretty dry right below the tree, which makes sense. So there's not tons of worms coming through. This is just like sand. Maybe this is even a better. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of. It doesn't hold together, obviously, because it's dry. But I don't know. I guess this middle layer is kind of the transition zone.
Well, this is where it's holding water.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that point.
But I mean, like, where we're really getting soil built.
Oh, sure.
The humus. But all of this looks decent.
It's like,
yeah.
It's like a sheer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can kind of see some of the
why it's so hard to grow.
impression. There's some wood. You can see how the wood is incorporated itself, I guess.
Yeah, but it's pretty.
Look, there's a little wormy. Wherever there's water, there's worms. And then there's, of course, wherever it's damp, there's those mycelial strands, little tiny guys. Doesn't seem like it's the worst. Yeah, it'll be interesting to dig out the pathways and to create the mounds and then to top dress it with soil or with compost and water in our amendments. And it'll be cool to just see. I mean, we'll have this footage to be able to look back on and compare to after a couple growing seasons. I mean, I think that our tenants let their chickens just graze all over everywhere and into our neighbors' yards too and stuff. So you can see like signs of them scratching and pecking, which is not the worst thing in the world. Actually, it's probably good. But then it does make it a little bit hard to maybe get a true read on it. You can just, it's kind of like uneven, and that's just the chickens. There's just all the little divots and mounds that chickens make, I guess. So they kind of make, I guess the point is they sort of naturally till in the wood chips a tiny bit maybe. It's also very wet, so it's hard to know exactly what's going on. It kind of looks like compost in a way. Oh, there's a little worm just on the surface there. It sort of looks like compost if it weren't for the pine needles. And the pine needles are just going to be a literally perennial issue for us because they blow in from that tree over there, and from this tree they spread across the yard, and and we'll see. Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do about that. So what's happening exactly with wood chips? Well, if you watch the Back to Eden documentary or have already watched, you know that Mr. Gauchi is super passionate about his craft. He thoroughly explains his process with discovering wood chips, and he kind of over spiritualizes it a little bit, in my opinion, but you can tell that his heart is really in it, and he's trying to help gardeners depend less on conventional growing styles and inputs like fertilizers and tillage. And the thing is, when you get into the documentary a little bit, it seems like he's saying all you got to do is just let the wood chips decompose and you get soil out of it. But something that he shows a little bit later on in the documentary is that a lot of the soil that he's creating is actually wood chips that he's let his chickens peck at and poop on and compost for him. And then he actually takes that stuff out of his chicken pen and sifts out the big chunks and then spreads that over his veggie garden beds. For his fruit trees and perennials, it seems like maybe he spreads the wood chips straight up, and this makes sense. I love the method of chicken composting, but I think I was a tad misled back when I first saw it, not because Paul is trying to mislead people, but that part of the chickens processing the wood chips is pretty important. And the reason is because, as you probably already know, wood chips are very rich in carbon. They have an approximate 500 to 1 carbon to nitrogen ratio, which, to put in perspective, chicken manure, which is widely considered a nitrogen-rich material, has something closer to 15 or even 10 to 1 carbon to nitrogen. Very high in nitrogen. So when you mix these two substances together, they balance each other out a little bit. 1 part chicken manure plus 1 part wood chips would technically result in a substance that's roughly 250 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. Still not nearly enough nitrogen to be considered a viable growing medium, but that's okay, because unless you make this mistake that I'm going to talk about, your soil likely won't lose all of its nitrogen. See, what people are talking about when they say wood chips will rob nitrogen from the soil is a process called nitrogen immobilization. So microbes in and on the wood chips and in and on the soil are going to decompose the wood chips by incorporating all the nitrogen that they can get into their diet to balance out the carbon. Microbes will slow their activity and their reproduction if they don't have enough nitrogen, because otherwise they'll starve. They need the nitrogen for protein and enzymes in order to be able to keep feeding on the carbon. So with something like wood chips that have such a high carbon content, the microbes are going to use up the nitrogen that's available to them very quickly, and then very quickly slow their metabolisms down once they run out. But the thing is, this only happens where the wood chips are hanging out. So on the soil surface, microbes are going to scavenge the nitrogen and then stop. And this creates a nitrogen deficit zone right there on the soil surface, but not much deeper. Now, if we were to mix wood chips into the soil, or worse yet, till them in, we'd have some serious problems, because now we're talking about the lower layers of the soil being nitrogen depleted, and that would be the main mistake that you could make. The thing is, nitrogen that gets locked up when you mix carbon into it is locked primarily in the bodies of the microorganisms, and so over time it is re-released back into the soil, but that can take quite a while. So far I've just referred to the microbes that are doing the decomposition as simply microbes, but more precisely we're looking at fungi as the ones that are primarily doing the work to break down the tough lignin in the wood chips. And you can tell that fungi is definitely present in the soil and around the wood chips here because of the white strands and splotches. Now, this isn't likely mycorrhizal fungi because mycorrhizae needs a plant host to survive. Instead, what we're likely got here is called saprophytic fungi, white rot and brown rot fungi that are oxidizing the lignin into carbon dioxide and water and accessing the carbohydrates as food. So what's happening here over the course of the past 5 years is that these fungal cultures have thoroughly colonized the woody organic matter. And we might have something somewhat similar to a natural forest where the wood has been allowed to break down over time. The thing that's great about saprotrophs is that they process this carbon material into humus and humic acid, which enhances soil structure and aids with water retention and nutrient cycling. So all in all, given the amount of time the fungi has had to feed on the wood chips, it's no surprise that the soil is in the state that it's in. It's pretty good. Now, it's interesting as I think about things that we might have done differently and what I would recommend for you to try out. On the one hand, this is a very, very slow process to build soil. And truthfully, I can't say for certainty what the soil would yield if we planted directly into it right now. At the moment, I can only look at the soil itself. I would imagine that there's some degree of nitrogen deficiency, but with the addition of animal manure, I think that that problem would likely solve itself. So would I do it again? Honestly, probably not, knowing what I know now about other techniques that might work better, a little bit faster. But am I disappointed with the result? Not really. It takes a long time for wood chips to break down into humus, and what do you know, we gave it a long time. I think that if we weren't going to be farming this land, it probably would be a pretty sweet place to plant a bunch of perennials. You can't plant directly into wood chips, in case you didn't catch that, but we could do something where we just scrape beside the wood chips, put compost down, plant the perennial, and then spread the wood chips back as a mulch. There's such healthy, robust, and active fungal cultures in the soil everywhere, so the perennials would probably be pretty well supported. For the future, we're going to be raking the wood chips off the yard and then testing for compaction. If we don't need to do a one-time till, we'll probably just dig out the pathways, mound the soil into the garden beds, top dress with compost, and apply our soil drenches as a preparation for planting in the spring. But we'll see. You'll have to subscribe if you're not already to follow us and see what actually happens. We'll definitely be using the wood chips as pathways. As you might know, I'm a huge fan of the function and the aesthetic of wood chip pathways. And so as we wrap things up, should you cover your yard in wood chips? And I think that there are several reasons why the answer would be yes, and several reasons why the answer might be no. So for why it's a yes, if you've got time, like years to kill before planting into a space and you want to passively build some soil, no rush, by all means, go and smother the weeds with cardboard and layer the wood chips to decompose for 5 to 10 years. If you're starting a perennial garden and you like the wood chip aesthetic, especially for a small growing space, you don't need much to cover it, just a few inches on top of cardboard. Do yourself a favor, I don't think that I've said this in this video yet. Make sure that you layer cardboard really thick and so that all the weeds are covered, because they will find a way through the little cracks and holes in the cardboard. Also, try to remove the tape if you're able, because otherwise you'll be picking it out forever. We took off most of the tape from our cardboard and we still find every single bit that we didn't take off. For why you might not want to spread wood chips everywhere, if you're starting a veggie garden, I would say that wood chips are not your best option. You could technically use them as a thin mulch in your veggie beds, but even then I prefer leaves or compost for veggies. If you're trying to create soil quickly and get something that you can plant into within one season, don't do the wood chips. If I was to go back in time, knowing what I know now about what I wanted from this front yard back then and what I was hoping I could grow, I would say for me, wanting a fast result but having very little money, looking out on the turf graphs, I would probably go ahead and till it to break things up. I would form my beds, lay cardboard down and wood chips in the pathways, and then I would immediately seed a cover crop mix into the garden beds. Then I'd apply Jadam microbial solution as it grew throughout the season. I'd apply IMO4 to the soil and terminate the cover crop at the end of the growing season, and then see if I could get the weeds smothered with the cover crop. If necessary, I'd maybe invest in a tarp and smother them that way, but otherwise I would just crimp the cover crop down or mow it and mulch with it, and then let it decompose in place over the winter, and I'd be much closer to having a viable soil that I could plant my crops into. And maybe we'll do something like that this year. Again, hard to say because we just got back to this property and we haven't been able to think about it too much yet. Anyway, guys, I hope that that was interesting, informative, inspiring, or just all right. So thank you for watching to the end. If you're looking to prep your soil for a new garden and you want to explore ways to make your own soil amendments, you will want to check out this video next. Thank you for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next one.